Good morning. Welcome to the really big show for Tuesday, May 6th. I am not Jim Check. I'm filling in for Jim Check. It's Josh Duncan, news director at Kelowna Now, joined by managing editor Iain Burns. A beautiful day here in the Okanagan. Iain, how's it looking in Ottawa?
It's cloudy. It's been cloudy for a while, and the cloud continues, but it is pretty warm. It's probably about 17, I think, right now.
Nice. Getting to that time of year. Plenty to go through today. Mark Carney going to Washington. He's chatting with Trump right now, I think. Ian's got a bit on that. Pierre Poilievre speaks kind of for the first time since the election. NDP's picked a new interim leader, Danielle Smith. Some big stuff she said yesterday. A little local film news on Trump tariffs. A little hockey news as well. Jim's not here, so I'm going to insert a little sports news into the end of the show. That's my stipulation. And we'll start quickly with Carney. That's obviously the big news of today, and it will be developing over the day. So, Iain, why don't you kind of start there, and what have we got from that so far?
Yeah, well, they're doing. I think it might be just about to finish, or it might have just finished, but they're doing the Oval Office sit down. And as usual with Trump nowadays, he's surrounded by all of his acolytes, like Marco Rubio and Vance, JD Vance on the sofa. You know, the same position that he was in when he heckled Zelensky, but he's been behaving himself today.
Is Carney wearing a suit? Let's start with that.
He is wearing a suit.
Okay,
he's wearing a nice sort of dark suit. I'm not sure if it's black or navy. Trump's got a very red tie on though, just to remind everybody that he's a Republican.
Good.
But there's been some interesting exchanges so far. Right off the bat, Trump kind of trolled Carney and said, "I'm the greatest thing to ever happen to him," sort of in reference to helping Carney win the election, which seems sort of indisputable at this point. That was the main, the thrust of the Carney campaign. And then Carney was quite sort of nice back. He said, "You're a transformational president, and you care about the American worker and all this kind of thing." Just the usual boilerplate sort of stuff. And then later on, he said, "Canada's not for sale," which we've heard him say many times, but he said it to Trump this time. But Trump kept on saying, what he's been saying for several months now, which is that Canada should become a state. But he said, in his words, it takes two to tango. But, I could have told him that 6 months ago.
True. It does take two to tango. It sounds like Canada does not want to tango. So where do you think we go from here? I mean, what's going to come out of this, in your opinion?
It's a hard one because he talked about USMCA, or CUSMA as we call it, which is like the NAFTA successor, the free trade deal, which Trump has just violated, completely ripped to shreds and done whatever he wanted to with it. That's kind of the cause of all this grief, because he decided to sort of put these unilateral tariffs on, which are completely outside of the treaty and what you're allowed to do. But he was asked about CUSMA just now, and he said it's fine, it's good, but some people have sort of taken advantage of it. That's what he said. I can't remember what his exact words were. He said, "Oh yeah, you have to follow it." That's what he said, even though he hasn't followed it, but presumably he means Canada. He has a list of things that he wants from Canada. One is, which most people have probably heard of, he wants access to the dairy market in Canada, because obviously it's pretty closed off. Though they do still have access, but it's very restricted. They want full access to that. So that would mean like a death to supply management. That's quite a controversial subject. But the other big one, I mean, there's things like steel and all that, and the Americans accuse Canada of like dumping steel and aluminium, and which dumping is something that you do where it's kind of, you get rid of your excess supply. It's like it's a no-no in international trade, and that's what he's claimed. Okay. But the other big one is digital services, which is all the tech bros, they've been complaining for a long time now that when they go overseas, like Facebook and Google and Apple and all the rest of it, when they go overseas and try and do business, they end up getting these taxes thrown onto their products, digital services taxes, which they hate. They're justified by the people that put them on, because they say, look, you don't pay taxes here. You pay taxes in like Luxembourg or Ireland or something like that, in like a tax haven. And Canada has also complained about that. And I think that is probably going to be one of the main things that they're going to discuss. And that's another hard one for Canada, obviously, because Canada protects its media ecosystem very jealously, because obviously without that protection, the theory goes, Canada would just be completely swamped with American TV and stuff like that. So that's going to be a hard one to deal with, but they're going to have that conversation, I reckon. And as for what will come out of it, I mean, who could possibly say? Who knows with Donald Trump? I mean, I feel like I know what Carney is going to say roughly. I kind of know what he wants, but who knows what Trump wants? He's a man of mystery, so I really have no idea. But I mean, I assume the only constant with Donald Trump that I know of is he will want to be praised and complimented and told that he's the big man. And I think Carney can manage that. So let's see.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Carney a lot more predictable than Trump when it comes to this kind of thing. He's obviously going in with some sort of plan or hopes, and Trump, you never know what's gonna come out of a meeting with him or an exchange of world leaders with him. And I feel like it's becoming increasingly difficult to tell whether Trump at times is trolling or a little senile, maybe in old age, or. So you always kind of have to have your guard up with Trump with these big meetings.
Yeah. Well, he uses that as a weapon. He uses that unpredictability that's his main negotiation technique, isn't it? It's kind of like, you have no idea what I'm going to do. Therefore, I have the advantage over you. It kind of makes sense in that way, but it's not very responsible or well-mannered.
No, it's not something you'd expect from a U.S. president, that's for sure. But it seems to work sometimes, so I guess we'll see.
He couldn't do that if he was in charge of Canada or a smaller country, but because he's in charge of America, I guess you can just kind of do what you want, can't you?
Yeah. Okay, and you'll have a little more on that meeting and all the details in the coming hour or two on Kelowna Now, or Now Media?
Indeed.
Perfect. Should we move on to a little closer to home, Mr. Pierre Poilievre?
Yeah, let's have him. He's filmed this video. I mean, I don't know where that is. Somewhere in the prairies. He just said the prairies. It looks like a sort of park in Calgary or something, doesn't it? But it's this short little video where he's doing that thing where he like walks towards the camera, and it's kind of like his mea culpa. I think it's like yeah, there you go.
Yeah, let's watch it. Let's watch it, and then we can chat about it. If you want to turn up the sound, Raul.
People who packed out our rally halls, our 2.3 million extra votes, the 25 extra seats, the breakthroughs in Ontario and BC, the expanded coalition of young people, union workers, entrepreneurs, soldiers, and countless others who had never voted before and are now supporting our conservative cause. Now, it wasn't enough. We didn't get over the finish line, which means that I need to learn and grow, and our team needs to expand. That will be my mission. And we've got a path. With a path to get elected back into Parliament as soon as possible, we'll be holding the government to account, proposing better ideas to solve the problems that you're facing every day. And our mission hasn't changed. I still want to put you back in charge of your life, give everyone who works hard a fair shot at an affordable home, living on a safe street, protected by police and soldiers and sound laws so that everybody's safe and our flag flies high over the freest country on earth. Now, it won't be easy, but easy street leads to a dead end, and the hardest paths lead to the best destination. Our destination is a country where the possibilities are as big and blue as this prairie sky. Let's make it happen.
Okay, well, the video seemed to freeze in the middle there. I'm not sure if that was the same for our viewers, but you didn't miss much because they just kept walking. I would imagine that's probably somewhere in the new riding. He's going to be, because he was visiting there with Damien. I can't remember his last name. I think Danielle Smith might have been there, kind of, meeting people and announcing he was running for by-election in that riding. So I imagine that's where it is, but yeah, the walkabout. Obviously, Anida was there, didn't say anything. The bit of the Pierre signature big grin, the smiling lessons. But I mean, the message seemed fine to me. I imagine he'll cruise to victory in that in that riding in the by-election. Has there been a date set for that?
No, because the guy that's been elected has to resign, and he can only resign when he's been sworn in, and he hasn't been sworn in yet.
Of
But
course.
that, yeah, that when that happens, he'll resign, and then it's up to Carney. I mean, it's a real strange sort of facet of Canadian democracy that the Prime Minister gets to decide when there's a by-election. But Carney has said that there won't be no messing around, no games, he said. So I guess it could be within a sort of couple of months, few months maybe.
Yeah, well, quickly, it feels like Carney has kind of come out and said, it's not going to do anything official with other parties. It feels like he wants more cooperation in Ottawa than we've seen, under the last few years of Trudeau, and a lot of bickering, a lot of fighting. So, I mean, a good example of that would be no delays, as soon as possible, let Pierre get his seat and move on, It feels like that would be the right move for Carney.
Yeah, well, as Jim and I were chatting about, I think it was yesterday, about how it looks like Carney doesn't want to do a deal with the NDP because that didn't really work out very well for the Liberals, I don't think, last time. And so I think he's going to try and frame it as a kind of like national government. And for that to be the case, he would need the Conservatives. And since his platform is relatively compatible, let's say, with the Conservative platform, it's not that far-fetched, really, that they could do a bit of business. And the Tories are also kind of like, they're asleep right now, aren't they? They're in that like weird sort of dead mode that a party gets into when they lose an election, where they have to like figure things out. So theoretically, it could work. But I mean, Poilievre there, just to talk about that video, it's what I've become used to with Poilievre, really, quite slick. This is kind of how he launched his brand as a politician from the start, really, which is that walking towards the camera. I don't know if you remember that one where it was actually a really good video, I think, where he was outside of his house that he grew up in Calgary, and he was like, "This is my house," and then he started to walk down the street.
Yeah, I do vaguely remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, back when he was a nerd. Back when he was a cute little nerd with his glasses.
Yeah.
Before he got like hench and all the rest of it. Anyway,
yeah.
So it was that style. It hasn't really changed. But there are only two bits in that I thought were interesting. One was when he said we need to learn and grow. It's kind of an admission that he messed up, but he didn't, or that he didn't succeed, at least, let's say. It's quite a sort of modest admission that like maybe it wasn't perfect. But then probably the most important one is that he said our team needs to expand, because that's one of the main criticisms of Poilievre and his campaign, is that he throws out loads of people, like obviously Doug Ford, the Premier of Nova Scotia, just loads of people, the CAQ, as they're called, the sort of the governing party in Quebec. And just loads of other people. He's been accused of having had this really tight-knit circle that's sort of controlled by Jenny Byrne, which is his like major domo, his like chief lieutenant.
Okay.
So I think that was kind of a gesture to people who thought that maybe that was one of the ways in which he screwed up, that he didn't bring in all the Conservative voices. But yeah, he's not one for like, he's obviously one of those weird people who are just like extremely optimistic. I get that impression from him. Like he's not like a down in the dumps kind of guy, is he? So it was very kind of like, we're gonna do it, we're gonna be stronger, So
yeah, right back to that messaging, kind of that positive. It's time for change, and we can still do it. And obviously, the messaging doesn't hit quite as hard, a week after the election as it might have a week before the election. But I guess you got to kind of resume and start somewhere if you're going to stay on as leader, right back to work. So, yeah.
Indeed.
And quickly, before we move on to this new NDP leader, just going back to the Carney thing about kind of wanting, more of a complete government with, MPs from every, no official agreement, and wanting, input and whatever it might be from all parties. I think, I'm not as much of a political guy as Jim and Iain. I'll admit that right here on camera, but I think that's what so many average Canadians want. And it's not just Canada. You see it in politics everywhere, where there's just less getting along in a way. And maybe it's because the world's going through such tough times, but there's just such like vitriol and hate between all governing parties and opposition. And it would be nice to see, you know, maybe MPs just not just blindly follow their party into votes, and you know, maybe we can get, you know, certain issues where parties kind of come together, certain people for certain parties, and hey, look, that's good for Canada. Let's move forward on this. And again, maybe that's someone who's not very political, just kind of being blindly optimistic, and that's not the way it works. But for me, that's a positive, you know, thing if that is the direction Canada or the world goes with politics that have been so divisive in the last 10 years.
Yeah. My only warning to you would be that usually when you hear that kind of talk from a politician, it's when they've just won an election. Yeah, and it's fair. Like, I will serve all Canadians or whatever. It's like, you often hear that, and then once you get down into the nitty gritty, it stops happening. But that's the kind of warning. But the note of optimism that I can end on here is that Mark Carney, as he said himself many times, isn't really a classic politician. He is obviously a politician, but he's not like, it's not like he came up from the sort of bottom of the Liberal Party, going around knocking on grannies' doors and stuff like that, trying to persuade people to vote. Like, he's not a partisan in that way, or he might be, but behind closed doors. But he's not devoted his life to partisan politics. He's devoted his life to being a central banker, which is, you know, a central banker can't be partisan. You can't, like, if somebody's going to call you up, a politician, you can't just say, I'm not going to speak to him because he's right wing or something. Like, it's just not, that's not how it works. It's, you're at the center of the sort of financial, you know, the whole thing, the whole financial system. You are the like anchor of that. So you have to speak to everyone. You got to do business with everyone. And there's not really much time for politics. So maybe Carney, you think, you know, old dogs can't learn new tricks and all that. He's 60 years old now. He's not gonna suddenly transform into like a Justin Trudeau style political hack. I don't think he's gonna try and lead as he did when he had his other jobs, his big jobs. So that maybe is a note of optimism.
Yeah, very good point. So it's you know, a week after the election. I guess we can only tell over the coming weeks and months what he actually does. All right, tell us about this new interim NDP leader.
Well, he's one of their, you know, handful that they have left of their 7 MPs. He's a Vancouver Kingsway, so you'll know that neck of the woods well, I suppose. But he's only interim. There you go. He's your guy. But he's only interim. But as I showed you earlier, he's already been attacked by the sort of left of the NDP, I guess you would say, because they look at him as not being sufficiently left wing, not sufficiently sort of socialist, because he praised the you know, the Vietnamese that resisted the communist dictatorship, and you know, as you do, it's a pretty normal thing to do. But in the NDP, for some people in the NDP, that's a big no-no. So already he's being criticized for being like not like pure blood enough, not a pure lefty. And he was, I think he was a finance critic as well, and he actually got down to business with a lot of stuff like the dental care and possibly the other one that they pushed through. But he's kind of like, I think you would say, on the more sort of like serious end of the NDP, the more moderate end. Okay. But that's kind of, that makes sense for an interim leader. That doesn't mean he's going to be the new leader of the NDP. But yeah, I guess he's just a safe pair of hands.
Yeah, fair enough. And do we have any idea what is the future for the NDP? Obviously, they're in kind of shambles right now. You need an interim leader for now. Like, what does it look like for them trying to find a new permanent leader?
Well, I think they do that through their membership. So they're going to have to arrange an election, like an internal election. But I would say one of their bigger problems is going to be money. They were already cash strapped in the run up to this election. Now they've lost official party status. So that means you lose certain financial privileges and other privileges. So they're gonna have to find a way to raise money. And then, you know, they might have raised a lot of it through unions and stuff like that, but a lot of the unions have abandoned them. So, I mean, as is often the case with politics, and we saw that in BC when the BC Conservatives usurped the BC Liberals, aka BC United. A lot of that was financial, really, and it happened kind of behind closed doors, because a lot of the money men said, "There's no point in backing BC United anymore. We're going to back the BC Conservatives." So that's kind of often the case, and we might think of that more in the sort of American context, in American politics, but it's important in Canadian politics as well. So I would say their number one priority will be to get the begging ball out, try and get some money.
So they're like, this is just a massively important time for the party, and not just finding a good new leader to kind of build them back up, but also a good new leader that's going to attract donations and attract funding. Really, like this is a critical time for them.
It's life or death, I would say, for them. And there's already all this talk. Mark Carney said no, that this is nonsense, but there's talk of defections from the NDP to the Liberals. So the MPs just saying, like, screw this, I'll just join the Liberals, and then my life is a bit more sort of my career is more secure, I guess. But they're going to have to resist that, and then they're also going to have to figure out, like, well, what are they for? Because I think under Singh, because he was so close to Justin Trudeau, politically as well as sort of personally, that they've lost their raison d'etre, haven't they? It's like, what are they actually for? What's their brand?
Yeah, what's their identity, for sure. I would imagine, and I've seen this kind of floated around, I would imagine if Carney did decide to try to tempt a couple NDP MPs with cabinet positions, be a tough one to say no to with the state of the NDP party right now.
Yeah, because that's a massive pay bump as well. Not just prestige and, like, for once what you do and say actually matters, which it doesn't usually apply to the NDP, but you also get a lot more money. So yeah, it's going to be hard. It'll be a tricky one for them to navigate.
Yeah. Okay, moving east a little bit to Alberta, our friendly neighbors. Obviously a big day for Danielle Smith. She announced it last week. She was speaking at 3 p.m. yesterday and did not disappoint with the hype. I wanted to talk a bit about what she said yesterday and what it means going forward.
I would say this is like one of those rare occasions where even for an international audience, this is worth kind of like having a look at, because usually Canadian politics is a little bit kind of, it doesn't have the same sort of fireworks as American politics, but this little I don't know what you would call it, like speech, I guess, but it was like a weird sort of piece to camera, like an 18-minute rant piece to camera. And it was just basically, she was just furious. You could tell. It was like she was getting off all the fury about Alberta's, what she considers to be Alberta's mistreatment over the last 10 years of what she calls hostile government by the Liberal Party. And the sort of newsy bits there where she said, because she changed, or she wants to change, she's going to try and get a law passed, which she will, I guess, because she's got a majority. But she put this law through, which is going to make it easier. It's going to lower the threshold for holding a referendum, considerably lower it, actually. I think they probably would have even met the threshold according to the old system. So they're definitely going to meet it according to this new one. She said that she's not going to stand in the way, basically. So she's put that law on the table. She did that a few days ago. And then she's, in this speech here, she said, I'm not going to stand in the way, and it'll be 2026 when it happens, if they get the signatures, which they will. So that was the big thing. And it was kind of, she also said, she announced this thing called like Alberta Next, which is a negotiating team that she's going to be chair of. And that's going to kind of go to Ottawa and say, basically get rid of Bill C-69, get rid of all the what Alberta considers to be sort of limits on its natural resources. And she said it. She basically said in so many words, it's like non-negotiable. And included in that was like access to the sea, the Atlantic and the Pacific, which was quite a big deal, because I don't know how they're going to get access to the Atlantic, because that has to go through Quebec, and they're just adamant that won't happen. But yeah, those are the newsy bits. Okay. And she said, you often get this as well, talking about like the beginning of a prime minister's term. Usually, even people who are hostile to that prime minister and that prime minister's party will have sort of nice things to say. And she said it was very encouraging to speak to him, and he sort of seemed to make sense. But then she said, in Alberta, we care about actions, not words. So we're gonna have to see, are there gonna be actions?
Giddy up. We do have a little bit of video from Danielle Smith yesterday. Do we want to play that now?
Let's have it, yeah. Let's listen to the fury.
Oh, yeah.
Alberta will be taking steps to better protect ourselves from Ottawa. As a start, I will soon appoint a special negotiating team to represent our province in negotiations with the federal government on the following reforms requested by our province. We hope this will result in a binding agreement that Albertans can have confidence in. Call it an Alberta Accord, if you will. First, Alberta requires guaranteed corridor and port access to tidewater off the Pacific, Arctic, and Atlantic coasts for the international export of Alberta oil, gas, critical minerals, and other resources in amounts supported by the free market rather than by the dictates and whims of Ottawa. Every province in the country, other than Alberta and Saskatchewan, have coastal port access, and no province needs it more given the size and value of our resources. This will benefit all Canadians to the tune of trillions of dollars of economic activity, including billions for First Nations partners. Second, the federal government must end all federal interference in the development of provincial resources by repealing the No New Pipelines Law, C-69, the oil tanker ban, the net zero electricity regulations, the oil and gas emissions cap, the net zero vehicle mandate, and any federal law or regulation that purports to regulate industrial carbon emissions, plastics, or the commercial free speech of energy companies. These laws are destroying investment confidence and costing Canada and Alberta hundreds of billions in investments each year. They need to go. Third, the federal government must refrain from imposing export taxes or restrictions on the export of Alberta resources without the consent of the government of Alberta. Frankly, all provinces should be given that same respect for their resources. And fourth, the federal government must provide to Alberta the same per capita federal transfers and equalization as is received by the other three largest provinces, Quebec, Ontario, and British Columbia. We have no issue with Alberta continuing to subsidize smaller provinces with their needs, but there is no excuse for such large and powerful economies like Ontario, Quebec, BC, or Alberta to be subsidizing one another. That was never the intent of equalization, and it needs to end. If these points can be agreed to by the federal government, I am convinced it will not only make Alberta and Canada an infinitely stronger and more prosperous country, but will eliminate the doubts a growing number of Albertans feel about the future of Alberta in Canada.
There you have it. From the horse's mouth.
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself. I didn't want to interrupt Danielle while she was flowing there. But
I wouldn't interrupt her.
That was
she'd probably hit you.
That was she's angry, isn't she? But she's stuck between a rock and a hard place in a sense, because she has to make sure that she doesn't get drowned by this independence wave. She wants to be on the right side of that. But then she obviously, like Scott Moe as well in Saskatchewan, she seems to me to be a very sort of genuine Canadian patriot. I don't think she wants Alberta to separate. So she's trying to kind of juggle those two things. And, it's useful for her in a way, because she can now, just like Quebec has done for decades, really, since the beginning of Canada, she can now go to Ottawa and say, look, I don't want to leave Canada, mate, but if you don't make some concessions here, then you're going to lose the goose that lays the golden egg, and you're going to be screwed.
Yeah, and that's kind of the impression I got last week when she made all those election changes. It was just kind of an easy, like, all right, well, like, now it's easy. If you guys really wanna, like, we won't say no, but hey, I'm not putting this forward. But hey, if you guys, if you say, we'll put it to vote. So that, it seems like she's playing that well.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I'm a reasonable guy, but my brother, like, let's keep him back there because he's gonna come and kick your head in. But it's kind of, I don't blame her, and I don't blame the Albertans really. They have been they get the PP taken out of them a little bit, don't they? They're not given the same kind of respect that I think Quebec is given, for sure, and maybe some other provinces. So
they should start speaking French.
They make a lot of money. They bring in the bacon, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They should start speaking French, and then maybe we'll look at them more seriously as separatists. Well, they got a whole other language.
What can they learn? Yeah, maybe they can learn some sort of like Sioux language or something, an indigenous language. Yeah, that would really do them favors.
Yeah, it would. It would. Okay, so obviously, I mean that just the start of that's going to be in the news, for a while going forward, and yeah, it doesn't seem like it's losing steam at all.
No, it's intensifying, if anything, and it's it's just going to give Carney something to think about, because in a way, Carney's kind of got a free hit, because he rescued, or he can tell the Liberal Party, it's partly true as well, I think, but he can say to the Liberal Party, like, look, I rescued this institution from extinction. Like, the Liberal Party was going to potentially even lose party status till I showed up, till big Consters showed up here. And he can say to all the MPs, like, you've got your very handsome salary and all your like prestige and all the rest of it because of me, because I saved you. Therefore, I'm going to get rid of Bill C-69 or something like that, and then say, I'm going to go make these compromises with Alberta. And if you want to bleat about it, then, I'm the big boy. I'll just kick you out of the party or something like that. Because he's got that in politics. It's not really about rules. It's not like written on paper. It's not like laws. It's more kind of like, it's like vibes in a way. It's a very social industry, or if you want to call it an industry, social sort of sector, where it matters like what your reputation is and what the story is that you can tell, which is why Trump is so successful as a politician. So if Carney can kind of tell that story and say, like, all of you are employed right now because of me, then he gives himself permission and space to go off and make deals with the likes of Alberta that the Liberal MPs might not be happy about, like to do with natural resources. So again, it's like, it all depends what happens. It all depends how Carney decides to govern. But if he does that, then everyone's happy except Quebec.
Yes, Quebec's never happy.
Yeah, that's just normal. That's just the status quo.
Yeah. Okay, what do we got next here, Iain?
Let's take a look.
My apologies.
Well, it's another. We already did that, didn't we? More Smithism, and then we've got a video here, haven't we? We've got this CBC video. I think this is actually about that story about how they spent $10,000. Danielle Smith again, how she spent $10,000 to go and chat to Trump. So let's see what CBC has to say about that.
All right.
Well, as Canada's Prime Minister prepares for his meeting with Donald Trump, we're learning more today about a meeting in early January between Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith and Trump. Who went and how much did it cost? We know it took place at Trump's residence in Palm Beach, Florida. And as Julia Wong tells us, some critics are raising questions about whether taxpayers received good value for their money.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has called her meeting at Mar-a-Lago with then-President-elect Donald Trump constructive. Now more details are emerging about the trip itself. The visit in early January took place before Trump became president and came as a trade war with the United States loomed. Smith has said she emphasized the mutual importance of the U.S.-Canada energy relationship and that she had discussions with key allies. Documents obtained by CBC News through a Freedom of Information request outlined Smith made the trip to Trump's Florida Golf Club with 2 government staffers and Alberta's senior representative to the United States. And records show the roughly 48-hour visit cost taxpayers more than $10,000.
What I asked the president was, do you want to buy more oil and gas from Canada? And he said yes.
Concerns have been raised about the cost and value of the trip. CBC News asked the Premier's office how long Smith had with Trump and why so many people were involved with the trip, but did not get a response.
We're talking about a large sum of money, $10,000, to be spent for perhaps more people being involved than were necessary for what might have been a very brief exchange and had very little impact. So it's about the wise expenditure of scarce taxpayer dollars that comes into question in cases like this.
The Premier's office pointed to comments she's previously made, where she said her strategy was to meet with people who can influence the U.S. president. Julia Wong, CBC News.
There you go. $10,000.
Yeah, that's getting a lot of criticism from me as well, I should say, yesterday. We were chatting about it. Just because I don't know what you think as a fellow journalist over there, but I don't think this is a news story particularly. $10,000 for 4 people to go and chat to Donald Trump. That's like the price of a hot tub.
Well, I was going to say
that's a good deal.
Don't have to do the hot tub. I was going to say again, not a big, like this isn't really my beat, but on the surface, 10,000 doesn't seem like very much. I suppose you can still argue whether they needed to go down at that time to the inauguration and all that, but 10,000 doesn't seem very high to me.
Well, everybody wanted to speak to him then. That was the height of the hysteria and the panic about the tariffs. Mm-hmm. So, and the premiers are spending an enormous sum of money, like $85,000 a month, for a lobby outfit to try and get Trump's ear. To think like for a nice little hot tub, an installation there maybe as well thrown in, they've got down there and had a chinwag with Trump. I mean, you can't. Come on. And then they got this academic. They just plucked her out of the closet somewhere and just said, "Go on, say something bad about this." But I just think it's just a silly story. It's the kind of thing that discredits the CBC, and it's saddening.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And 10,000 doesn't seem like a big number for that kind of thing to me. So yeah, I agree with that. Okay, well, carbon tax. Obviously, that was I believe that's next on our docket here. And yeah, it has shown ending the federal retail carbon tax has obviously brought gas prices down, which is positive.
Who would have thought, eh?
I was going to say, were we debating that? Whether it, I think we've all kind of seen it for the most part at the pumps. I mean, it's a little confusing because it happened right as we're getting into summer when prices, go up anyways. So it's a little hard to gauge. So I guess seeing the data is good. I suppose I'm a little more curious to see when it, takes effect on my gas prices at home and BC Hydro or Fortis BC bills, and I have it set so I pay the same amount every month. So I'm curious to see when that changes, when my yearly thing and it reevaluates how much I pay. I'm curious to see how that will change my home bills. But yeah, I guess we've seen it at the pump, which is nice. I don't drive as much as a lot of people. I can see my house from the window here, so it's like a 2-minute drive. I should probably be walking, but I'm sure that's been great for some people. Obviously, I know a lot of people that drive all day, and it's probably been a huge difference. I guess it's good to see the numbers, but we'll see if it starts, helping grocery prices and all this stuff that we said were affected by the carbon tax. If you carbon tax the trucks that bring the food from here to here, food's going to cost more. So we'll see if that starts to kind of come into play here soon.
Yeah, well, I do the inflation report every month that comes out of Statistics Canada. And one of the main sort of items in the basket that can either, knock it up or bring it down is gas prices. And it's often very, very small numbers that determine whether or not, Statistics Canada is happy with the report or not. So you would think, wouldn't you, a huge cut like this? Obviously, that's got to filter through, hasn't it, to the inflation rate? But I mean, it's funny that we're even talking about this in a way because it's so obvious. But that was actually a point of contention, wasn't it, for so long during Trudeau's day, where it was that was an argument that we were having, oh, will it affect inflation? It's obviously. And here's Trevor Toome here. He's the economist that Mark Carney slapped down the other day. He's saying that nearly the full value of the tax cut has been passed on. So what are they doing with the rest of it? If it's only Neely, what are they doing with the rest of that tax cut?
I don't know. That's interesting. Where could it be? Okay, well, firing through that. Good news on gas prices, obviously. Longest ballot talk. I love this chat. I love this. Like, is this a new? Has this been going on for a long time, or is this a new thing with all the names on the ballot? It seems so stupid and petty and kind of fun for people who are just looking from the outside. Like, it's just kind of comical.
It's, yeah, I mean, you could look at it as being comical, but it's also, I think it's very cheeky. It's against the principles of democracy, isn't it? Against the spirit of democracy.
Yeah.
But they've only targeted Poilievre so far. And they're going to do him again.
With that, but it's almost kind of like, like Trump trolling almost. It's almost like, well, there's nothing wrong with this. Like, we're going to do it. And like, it surprises me this isn't somewhat illegal, or like there hasn't been. And maybe if it's new, like people just started doing this for this, contested election, maybe they will make it illegal. But and
it's because they want election reform. They want electoral reform. So they want more like proportional representation and that kind of thing. Yeah. But it's ironic that they've only targeted Poilievre, because Poilievre has never been in favor of that, whereas the Liberal Party under Trudeau was in favor of that. Trudeau said that he was going to reform how people are elected and how elections are held, and that's what he said on his last day. It's like that was his number one regret. It's like that I didn't pass electoral reform. So if anything, they should have targeted Liberals, shouldn't they? Because they're the party that said they wanted to do this. The Tories have never expressed an interest in this.
So do you think that's actually what the motivation behind this is, or are they just kind of saying that and they're just trying to screw over Poilievre? I don't know.
I think it's just like we live in this era now where you have to be very imaginative in the way that you imaginative is one way to put it. Some other people might say rude or shameless, and if you want to get attention, and that's why you get these like climate change people that go and sort of stand in the middle of a highway and stuff like that. Like, it just seems like people are going to increasingly antisocial methods, levels to try and get attention, and that's what I see this as being. Yeah. But I reckon there's also, as I've sort of almost said, but not quite clearly said just now, I think this is basically a left-wing campaign, and as usual, they just can't resist themselves. They have to hit the Tories, just like Jagmeet Singh during the election campaign. Even though his party was being gobbled up by the Liberals, he couldn't help himself. He still had to attack Poilievre, even though there's like not really much to be gained from that. But I do think that it's a bit of a lefty attack on the righties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And hey, yeah, when I say comical, I do mean like immature, like cheeky comical for sure. It's kind of like from the outside, you can kind of be like, like, all right, but like a little childish for sure. Like, what are we doing here?
It's also a lot of money involved in that. And you got to get your and you got to get the signatures and everything. So I don't know why.
Yeah, because it's not just like
they're doing everything.
It's not just going to a website and being like, all right, I want to run for this riding. Like, you have to do some stuff and pay some money. So, yeah. 31.47, the price of a fruit salad.
That's insane. Just criminal, isn't it?
Criminal and dumb. However, I say make a fruit salad at home. I get there are times when people just want to buy a fruit salad, but oh man, so easy to just
But I'm looking at the fruit in there. Grapes, strawberries, blueberries. You can get all those in Canada, can't you? Like, no excuse for that sort of price. It's not like they've been flown in from Bolivia or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know how is this definitely, what grocery store is this?
It kind of looks like, I don't want to say it because it's like, defamatory, but it looks like Metro to me, but I don't know.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, it's Metro.
Well, that is, I think we can both agree that is insane. I will add, as I said, good excuse to make fruit salad at home, but obviously sometimes you want things on the go. So that's insane. I would imagine that fruit will rot in that container at the grocery store.
As they often do, yeah. That's the worst thing of all, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ends up being like pig food, if anything, plant food.
Yeah, so no one wins there. Moving on, we're gaining ice. we're apparently gaining ice in Antarctica.
That's a big win.
Yeah, it seems like a big win. So, do we have a video here? Nope, that was just, we got trigger happy. That's okay. But I only have the screenshot, so I can't really go further into this. But it looks like between 21 and 23, we saw some increases in ice. Is there a video to go with this, Rommel? No, let's fire it up. I like ice. We're going to check out a video on ice. I like the Titanic music at the start. It felt quite fitting with icebergs and stuff.
Yeah, that was when ice wasn't our friend, but now it is.
Yeah, ice is hit and miss. Well, yeah, that's positive news. I think we got the trolling quote tweet as well there, so we can laugh at that. Thumbs up at more ice, and we'll move on from that. One more, I think, here in BC before we get to a couple quick local things. BC seeking more clean power projects and hoping to reduce U.S. reliance, which is kind of, the same type of stuff we've seen over the last few months, looking to reduce our reliance on our neighbors to the south. Can you talk to us a bit about this story that came out yesterday, Iain?
Well, it's all like wind power for the most part. It seems like our dear, cherished friend Adrian Dix is all in on the wind, but it's all what they call clean energy. So in other words, not fossil fuels. I don't know. I mean, it's a strange one, isn't it? Because coming as I do from deepest, darkest Europe, who've been doing this kind of thing for a long time now, I've seen how it hasn't worked in quite a dramatic fashion, particularly in my very benighted, sad homeland of England, where they basically can't have power. They can't. It's just they like ration power through extraordinarily high prices. So people don't use, they don't heat their homes up the way they should be. And you're going there soon. Maybe you'll experience it yourself, being chilly in a house because people just can't afford to do it because it just becomes insanely expensive. And that's just people rather than, businesses. Businesses just can't, they haven't got a hope. It's the most expensive industrial energy on the planet, pretty much. So I do worry, but then on the sort of positive side, BC has something that Britain doesn't have and not many European countries have, except for like Norway, which is loads of hydro energy. And hydro is obviously like very reliable as long as there's not a drought. And it's, it makes up the majority of BC's power. So in a way, BC's so blessed, as is like Quebec and some other parts of Canada. It's so blessed that it can kind of afford to mess about a bit and things will still probably work and be okay. But I mean, we're going to have to wait and see if it works out well.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not an expert on this kind of thing, but I've always thought there's been a lot of rush to get to renewable energy, which I think is important. But to me, it seems more of like a multi-generational transition. And I mean, obviously, that's a very, hot topic when it comes to politics and how Canada should move forward. But I think renewable energy projects are great. I also don't think we should be getting away from more traditional energy quite yet, or as fast as we're, setting targets for. And like you said, at the risk of not having power, in the future when we're trying to rely too much on things that aren't maybe tested or proven or reliable as the good old trustworthy, oil and gas and all that stuff. So, yeah, I guess we'll see how this plays out. BC, obviously, a lot different than the UK, like you said. Quebec, BC, like a lot more land mass, a lot more hydro. Probably more room to put up wind farms and stuff like this. But yeah, I mean, I think that's something that a lot of that stuff is going to take a long time to really become a reliable source. So maybe I'm talking out of my ass and don't know what I'm saying, but yeah, I guess we'll see where this goes for BC.
I'm glad that you are possibly talking out of your ass, because I've just looked on YouTube at the comments and I'm being called a socialist. That should go back to soccer practice. I knew I shouldn't have worn this shirt.
I did comment on it before we started. Hey, it's a nice shirt. Come on.
Exactly, it's a lovely shirt. A bit of athleisure. But me and my socialism need to get that sorted out. Really, more of a communist, if anything.
Yeah, figure it out. All right, what else do we go? We're going to try to fly through a couple of things here. Government, I actually don't know what this is, so why don't you take this on, Ian? Was there a travel? Oh, the state's travel boycott. Okay. I like that Trudeau cowboy hat. Very cute.
Yeah, he used to do that, didn't he? When he'd come to Alberta, pretend that he was a cowboy for a little bit. But everybody does that, don't they, in Alberta, to be honest?
How we escape our regular lives. Go be a cowboy for a bit.
Yeah. So this is Blacklock's trying to, Blacklock's, what they do, Blacklock's Reporter, it's online, I guess you would call it like a magazine or something like that. They just try and expose the hypocrisy of the Canadian government, particularly the federal government. And this is what they're claiming here. They're saying that, Trudeau said, and so did other people, he's not the only one that said this, but he said, like, don't go to America, basically, try and stay in Canada. But they've gone and hired US publicists to encourage Americans to come to Canada, which, Blacklock's is pointing out the hypocrisy there. I think there've been other examples of their hypocrisy in that regard, like giving loads of money to Mark Zuckerberg during the election rather than to us and similar sort of peasants with their begging bowls out. But yeah, it's just like saying, look at this hypocrisy, basically, and water off a duck's back for the federal government, really. They get this kind of thing all the time, so I'm sure they won't care.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, you could call this stuff out endlessly in all levels of government, really, and I don't see anything changing. So
it's good that it's done, though. I mean, we should be aware of the hypocrisy, but I guess not surprised.
Don't get me wrong. I think it should be absolutely brought to the public's attention, and it should be talked about. Unfortunately, maybe I'm just being a little cynical, but I just never see anything changing at any level of government when that stuff is called out, which is too bad.
Yeah.
All right, let's go a little local, although it has a Trump tie to it. Rommel, can we get that clip from Kent's video yesterday on film tariffs and the potential effect in the Okanagan? Kent talked with John Summerland from the Okanagan Film Commission. I believe he's the Okanagan Film Commissioner, which is a pretty sweet title when you can just add ER to the end of the organization.
Does he live in Summerland? That's my question.
No, sadly, I don't think he does, but he really should.
I would feel obliged in that situation. I think I just got to move, got to go there.
Have to, right? Yeah, at least set up a PO box there so you can get mail there. I think we're ready to go on this.
The Okanagan Film Commission. What are we?
Red alert.
Tariffs.
It's not working? Okay, well, that's okay. It doesn't work today. Basically, I mean, to sum it up, John Summerland basically said, he called it wild stuff. He said it was a bit nuts, but he also said, it's unclear right now what all of this means. Trump has really only talked about it through a post on his Truth Social. And Summerland said he, talks about a lot of things on social media. Some kind of come into fruition, some don't. He'll waffle back and forth on some. So, I mean, they're not really planning anything to, nothing's changing for the industry right now. And of course, we're talking about the Okanagan film industry where I'm sure you've seen it around town. You can see a movie being shot down by Pulp Fiction downtown there. We had a movie being shot in our office about a month ago. A lot of movies in and around the Landmark District. So it's becoming a big industry for Kelowna, and like all this tariff stuff, what is the effect on this industry in Kelowna if that does happen? John Summerland seemed pretty encouraged that the industry could shift, and if something does happen, there's still a need for streaming services, in China or Europe or wherever it may be, that there's still going to be work here for the film industry. And he seemed positive, but I don't think you can say it's a good thing. If you're taking away a giant customer like the US, and again, who knows where those tariffs are going to be? Are they going to be on the production? Are they going to be on the distributor who brings them back to the States? We don't have any details, but John Summerland was trying to keep it positive in the wake of definitely some kind of shocking uncertainty, because I don't think anyone saw this coming on Sunday when Trump announced it.
Apparently, it's Angelina Jolie's dad, John Voight. He's been in Trump's ear, apparently, saying, sort this out. Because he's got this little team, Mel Gibson, John Voight, and someone else. Is it Vince Vaughn or somebody like that? There's another like famous actor in this group that's kind of advising Trump on Hollywood. And apparently it's come from him, but I don't know, that's just reports. I don't know if it's actually true, but it is a weird one, isn't it? But I guess if you think about it, Canada and the UK, which is another big kind of destination for Hollywood productions, where they go to do a lot of make a lot of their films. They offer like massive tax credits, and it kind of tips the balance. It makes a lot of them leave America to go and do it somewhere like Squamish or whatever, or near Vancouver, because it's just cheaper, because they get so much money back in tax credits. But they also do it because, the scenery, this is the thing that I don't understand, because like they film a lot of things up there in Squamish and whatnot, and near Vancouver, because the backdrop is just amazing. Like, didn't they do Hunger Games and that Shogun? Really good TV show. If you haven't seen it, that was, it's amazing that they did it, because it's supposed to be Japan, and I had no idea myself. Usually I'm like looking around at the scenery to try and discover where it was filmed, but that was all done in BC and it looked like Japan. So that's like that kind of diversity that's on offer. And then in a place like BC, you can then just nip over the Coquihalla and you can go to the Okanagan or Kamloops or whatever, and then you can film like deserty sort of scenes as well. It's like it's a really good location for filming, isn't it? So I just don't know. Obviously he hasn't asked the production companies, because there's no way that they would want this. So
no, yeah. And on that point of scenery and stuff, I saw someone on Twitter, or X, the Everything app, say, what are we going to film, like Game of Thrones in like Montana? Like, some of this stuff you just kind of, I guess, again, special effects are crazy these days. You can really do anything, but certain things you just have to, like your example of Vancouver, like maybe you can finagle Seattle into having a similar look, but a lot of this stuff, it's not just a random choice where they're going to film. And I think you're right about the tax credits and subsidies and stuff. And maybe that's more something that Trump will want to tackle, but I just don't think it's realistic to, it's not like it's not like steel where you're bringing it into the States and you can tariff that, but it's movies. Like, it just seems like such a weird one, but I do understand I do think the film industry in the States has maybe taken a bit of a hit for various reasons, and maybe less filming in the States. And I don't have all the information on that, but I understand the concern from a president, but it did seem kind of random. And I think there are other reasons to film outside the US than just, trying to save a little money. So I guess we'll see how this one plays out. But, a lot of Hallmark movies being filmed in the Okanagan, a beautiful, like, small town picturesque setting. And it's cool seeing them film here, and it's cool, maybe checking out the movies when they come out. So hopefully that industry continues to thrive in Kelowna. Sports talk. Bear with me, Iain. All of this has to teach me everything. This has to do with Ontario. I'll keep this pretty quick. I know Jim never does this stuff, but hopefully there's some Leafs fans watching maybe. Round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs got going yesterday with Florida in Toronto to take on the Leafs. And I think a lot of people were kind of down on Toronto heading into the series. The big bad Panthers, the defending champs. You know, the Leafs have a history of choking, all this stuff. But, hey, they won game one. They won game one 5-4. They held off a late push. But the talk was the injury to Toronto starting goalie Anthony Stolarz, who was kind of run into by Sam Bennett, who has a history of maybe some cheap shots at times. I didn't view this one. Do we have the video, Rommel? Is that possible, or are we running into issue? No, okay, we don't have any more videos, so you can go look it up on Twitter or X. But there was talk about suspension and all this discipline. It did not happen. He's not going to get any discipline. So Bennett will be playing game 2. The series is 1-0. And you can see in this slide that Anthony Stolarz was the backup goalie for the Panthers last year when they won the Cup. He's now the Leafs starter. So it's not like they're enemies. Bennett and Stolarz are very good friends. He said in his interview this morning that he checked on him. He reached out. He never wanted to hurt him. All this stuff. Kind of like Trump, I guess you never know if he's telling the truth, but I believe him. I've played on hockey teams, so I was going to show a clip of the injury, but I guess we have a bit of a bug going on, so we won't do that. We'll jump on to, actually quickly before we get to the draft lottery, tonight, for anyone looking to watch some hockey, Edmonton and Vegas, that series gets going, another Canadian team, and also Carolina, Washington gets going tonight, and then Winnipeg. After their crazy win on Sunday night, they get going on Wednesday against the Stars for round 2. So 3 of the 4 series left in the NHL have Canadian teams, which I think is pretty cool. Ian, thoughts?
I'm just sad that the Sens didn't win. They didn't beat the Leafs. There was a lot of hype about that in Ottawa. I saw a lot of people with flags
and car
on the top of their cars.
Yeah. It's car flag season.
Yeah. No, it's just sad because the Sens obviously never win anything, do they? They're pretty crap. God bless them.
Well, I'm a diehard Canucks fan, so I understand the many years of sadness. And you had that same kind of feel. Obviously, I don't live in Vancouver anymore. I haven't for 10 years, but the same kind of buzz in the city that I kind of got even from Kelowna with the Canucks on a run last year and going a couple rounds. It really does inject a lot of life into a community, a city, and I'm sure Toronto's flying off the hook right now. Ottawa for the last 10 days or so, as you said, was going crazy. An exciting return to the playoffs after I think it was 8 years for them. But I think they have a bright future. They got some really good young players, and they should be back in the playoffs pretty soon. So, yeah, exciting stuff for Canadian hockey.
Who's going to win the Cup?
You know what's weird? I've been telling, maybe I'll out myself here. As a passionate Canucks fan, I hate the Alberta teams, and I've hated the Leafs my whole life. I got a couple good buddies who are Leafs fans, and I did decide before the playoffs this year, I'm just going to cheer for the Leafs. I put a little money on the Leafs, so I'm cheering for the Leafs, but if I had to pick a team right now to win the Cup, I would pick Dallas. So that's my official on-the-record prediction. Maybe it'll be Dallas over Toronto, but Florida will be a big test for the Leafs. Even winning game 1, we'll see where this series goes. The other news, as you see on the screen, yesterday the draft lottery, the Canucks did not win. They could only moved up 10 spots, but the Islanders won with 3.5% chance to win. Other teams had a 20 and 25% chance. The Islanders drew the 4 ping pong balls they needed to win the draft lottery. So they moved up. They should have the 10th overall pick. They're now going to have the 1st overall pick, which will likely be one of Matthew Schaefer, Michael Misa, maybe James Haggins, who's a Long Island native. Ian's I don't know any of these people. But yeah,
I know what Long Island is.
Yeah, there you go. Exciting times for Islanders fans. Utah also won one of the draws. They move up from 14th to 4th, so a lot of movement. It was exciting. I will say one thing on the draft lottery. Usually they did it with all the official lawyers and stuff backstage, and then they just go out to the stage and reveal the order with envelopes. This year they actually did the ping pong ball draw on stage, and it was very exciting. It was a lot of fun for 20 minutes. So I hope they keep that going forward. Congrats to, are there any Islanders fans out there? Who knows? But congrats to any Utah Hockey Club fans. Looks like they're going to become the Utah Mammoth. And that is the end of my sports talk. There you go.
Sorry, Utah doesn't have an NHL team, do they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, so you.
At least they've got. I suppose at least they've got snow in Utah, so that's an improvement.
Yeah, they're a small market for sure, but I guess they're pretty passionate about they're one of those like markets where they get a team and that's all they got. Kind of like Oklahoma City having a basketball team, like it's all they got. I mean, almost like the Canucks having a hockey team. We don't really have much else, so they seem to do.
Utah Jazz, haven't they? They've got a basketball team.
Yeah, so same owner, and they're playing out of the same rink right now as they build a hockey rink, but it's very funny. They fit the ice rink in, and you can't see the nets from every part because it's built for basketball. So the seats are all weird, and you if you sit in the corner right now, you can't see like half of the ice, and it's just an obstructed view. I think they have a lot of those. I was buying tickets actually to the Fulham game in England coming up here because I'm going on vacation, and as you would know, a lot of those old English stadiums have obstructed views, but I don't think they're quite as bad as the obstructed views in Utah for hockey. So,
I've been in some pretty bad ones in Luton's. I don't know if you have ever been or would ever go to Luton Stadium, Kenilworth Road, but there's like a somewhat obstructed view there that I've been in before. I've been in a few, yeah. It's Archibald Leach, isn't it? The old architect who designed these ancient stadiums, and some of them are pretty dreadful. Yeah.
Yeah. Is Luton Town the one that like literally fits into a neighborhood, and they went up a league last year?
It's worth going. What did you say? They got what last year?
I think they went up to the Premier League or maybe the Championship or something. They went up a league, and all the talk was about the stadium being like not good.
Yeah. They did get up to the Premier League, and then they were relegated, and then I think they've just been relegated again, I think. So now they're down into League One. But it's so strange when you go there, because it's like it's kind of a very small neighborhood, very small houses, and it's like they have like the street signs on them and everything, and then you just kind of go through a hole. There's like houses, and then there's just like a doorway, and you go in, and it's like the stadium.
Yeah. That's cool.
Very weird, but it is cool though. It'd
part
be
of
sad.
Part of the charm of English football. Yeah, for sure. Part of the charm of English football, and obviously some of these stadiums and some of the bigger teams are now moving to these spaceship stadiums, but you still have a lot of the charm. So yeah. Okay, anything else? I think we're going to skip the markets and then gold stuff today because we're running a little late on time, and that's Jim's thing. So he can give you a big update on Friday when he's back.
Yeah, not much movement anyway. Not much to report, I don't think.
There you go. We'll cover it tomorrow if there's much to report. I'll leave that to Iain. Anything else you want to bring up today, Iain?
We could play that. I don't know, actually, if we can't play videos, can we? But we could have played that David Attenborough thing just to hear his calming voice as he talks about dolphins and things.
Let's punt that to tomorrow. Why don't we cover that quickly tomorrow?
Okay. And then the only other thing is the memes. Jim loves these memes. They're just Babylon Bee tweets. If you wanna laugh at some of Jim's memes.
Do we have those, Rommel? All right, fire those up. Let's do those before we go.
There you go. That's where Jim is. Good. Jim's in San Francisco right now, so
that's true. Yeah, you probably see him in that
He's
photo.
In prison.
He's in prison. I heard he's swimming out to Alcatraz.
Yeah.
Another one, 3-0 checks into rehab for Pepperidge Farm goldfish addiction. Okay.
I've got to confess, I don't even know what that means. What is that, Pepperidge Farm?
There's just like the goldfish snacks. I mean, I'm 34 and I could probably...
Oh yeah, I give these to my kid, and I didn't even recognize them.
Be careful, they might have to check into rehab if they really get into it. Yeah. Any more? Here we go. Oh, okay.
That does not reflect the opinions of media.
Where's the disclaimer? Oh boy. we know what the demo is for. Okay. All right. Well, there are the memes for today. We'll see what Jim has for us from San Francisco tomorrow on the meme front. I believe that is all she wrote for today. Iain, any last thoughts?
No, just what a jolly experience we've had. What a good bit of banter.
So much fun. Now I know what I've been missing out on.
Exactly, man.
Maybe I'll just take over the show from Jim going forward.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Or you can come in and do your sports corner. You can be like Norm Macdonald and do the sports thing.
Ooh, I like that. I could never be that funny, though. That guy was a Canadian treasure. All right, well, on that note, on behalf of Iain, Rommel, on the controls, my name is Josh Duncan, and thank you for watching Now Media.
We don't just report the news. We live here, too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent.